Tuesday, April 11th. Sun shines out. Driving down the freeway, which growing up there was no freeway, so unique opportunity here in my older years. Bit of a interesting thought crossed my mind driving past yet another semi-truck, a lorry, if you're British by chance. So much cargo. I know I often comment that most people are disconnected from virtually everything. That's usually because they're distracted. I also often have little thought experiment calculations anytime I see something and extrapolate it to like an item at the grocery store. How many of those have to exist, what that looks like, where that came from, what the resources needed for that are, to really give yourself a more full sense of the global spectrum, your impact as an individual in what you consume, where that comes from. It's not insignificant. I mean, one person, yeah, technically. But in order to become more connected, we have to become more aware. And to become more aware, we have to allow ourselves or force ourselves to do a little bit more critical thinking. So, I drive down the freeway a lot. I see a lot of semi-trucks. Hauling cars, hauling boats, hauling who knows what. No doubt a lot of it is the consumables declining that I just mentioned. Things going to Walmart, things going to the grocery store, things on Amazon. I mean, topic for another conversation. How disconnected we are from that piece, the kind of inane, mindless consumption of what we call our daily necessities, but really most people end up buying and purchasing, consuming a bunch of things that aren't necessary that still get lumped into that category. But we're going to go a little bit beyond that this time. Every now and then you'll see trucks carrying you don't know what. It's not fuel. It's not a carnival equipment. It's industrial. It's non-descript. They're in very curious containers. And I'm not speaking specifically. I just saw another one. It could be massive communications systems. This one was really strange shaped containers. Half of them were marked Siemens, the German telecom or communications tech company. And it just sparked this thought in my mind related to what I already mentioned, our persistent disconnection from everything, from the food we eat. But let's say that it is some piece going to some mega industrial facility for fill in the blank. Okay? It ought to make one pause, try to stop and think, and ask questions like, what are we creating? Where are we going? Why are we going in that direction? Who really wants to go there? Who's making these decisions? How many people are merely along for the ride? Okay? I think virtually everyone, except those that are of similar mind to myself and of a likewise philosophy of nature over technological progress just for the sake of the progress. I think most people falsely associate humanity's evolution, change over time, to assume time exists, change over forward moving time, with this other background assumption that it is improving, meaning actually evolving as opposed to devolving. So change for the better over time versus change for the worse, as it would suggest as an adaptation, but we don't have to get so out in the weeds with it. We just think, okay, time goes on, we're getting better at XYZ, right? We're faster cell phone service and faster ability to grow food, and if you stop and look at any one of these things, you're like, who are they benefiting? Really? And are they just benefiting it strictly for monetary gain? Very likely. Right? There are certain facets of technology, improvements of previous modalities that do benefit us, right? I think there's a strong case for the washing machine over scrubbing your undies down on the rocks. But I actually think these are fairly few and far between when we look at the glut of what most people think of as technological progress, right? It's kind of been synthesized into your handheld devices and the extrapolation of those kind of technologies. They're everywhere. They're the ones that are most marketed to people, and therefore we associate that with actual improvement, actual evolution. Not the case. And this isn't actually going to be the video on transhumanism either, which you can see how that would dovetail into this, right? I think very important questions have to be asked when leave me alone is the fourth notification of the same person. Certain questions have to be asked when and as we as humanity continue down our path, our supposed evolution. So when I see these pieces roll down the freeway, I ask myself, what are we constructing? And how is it actually benefiting us? Or is it not? Right? The powers that be have done such a phenomenal job in portraying, painting the lives of America. Let's talk about Americans. The Native Americans or the American Indians, those that purportedly inhabited North America before the colonization 400 or 500 years ago, etc., right? They describe them as savage and tribal and primitive. Really what they're doing is trying to dissuade those coming to the land and those of us today through false history that perhaps they had a better understanding of what was important in life, and that their daily pursuits and what we'd call their evolution would have looked markedly different from ours today. Meaning other peoples, previous peoples, those that have been virtually exterminated, or at least their cultural norms, if not the continued bloodline genetics of the people, those have all been eviscerated so that we can't actually juxtapose what we're doing now with the truth of what they were doing then. In other words, I do not believe the typical person today has the correct understanding of what positive evolution ought to look like. And instead, that notion has been wholly, wholly supplanted by this conception of technological change and, quote, advancement, which at best would be putting us in a pause, and at worst is leading us in the wrong direction at an extremely fast rate. Okay? Because I think anyone's gut reaction to the simple question when you see towers going up or I don't know, this or that being built, whatever that was going down the road, and you're like, what is that for? And they just feel, oh man, it's for, we're building society, we're improving on what we did before. But are we really, or are we just enhancing our entrapment, polishing up the very distraction, right? I do not believe we are on the right course. I do not believe what we see in everyday life and society is the proper embodiment of the natural trajectory of mankind. I believe we've been intentionally diverted from that, put on a different course. I think most, if not all, of what the average person does and engages with is an inversion of what they should actually be doing. It's easy when you're told history over a 100, 200, 300 period time, whatever, especially when most people's point of reference goes back to like the year zero, and they're like, well, man, we used to be in chariots and now we're in cars. I mean, things are getting better. We're working on rocket ships. Because we have enhanced our levels of comfort, only arguably by those that have force-fed us the history that they want us to believe. We don't actually know for a fact what everyday life was like. No doubt the Dark and Middle Ages sucked relative to today, but that doesn't mean they were any better than 1,000 or 2,000 years before that, right? And did we merely course correct back to what life would have been 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plus thousand years ago? Or are we on a very different trajectory? And because we continue to use this baseline of like the Middle Ages and Dark Ages, and it's like, oh, we don't want to go back to that. Thank God we have all this technological progress. Good thing we're building all these things. Good thing all these trucks are going somewhere and all these people seem busy and occupied. Yeah, but doing what? What are we building as a society? Where are we going? If your head is out of the sand and out of your ass since the last 3 years at least, you gotta take notice that powers that be are wanting to go in a certain direction that people don't want to go. And I would argue that where most people still think they're trying to go is incorrect. Like we gotta do 180 degrees hard, not just 10 degrees away from a great reset or something like that. Try to imagine the dynasties of the Egyptians, right? And just try to sit with that. We're talking hundreds and thousands of years, and ask yourself, what was their daily life? What were they trying to accomplish? Did they get there? Did they get any further along than we did? Is our state of technology today any indication of any advancement beyond our own enslavement? I think I'll leave it with that.